Hi, everybody. Welcome to COM 494. My name is Dr. Jimmy Sanderson, and I will be your instructor for this class. I'm definitely very excited about teaching this class. Social media and sport is an area where I do most of my research in. I've been studying in this area for about 8 years now, and it's just, when I first started and we were looking at blogs, it's really interesting to see how much social media has evolved and changed sport and how much is probably going to continue to change sport as well. Um, you can read more about my background in the faculty introduction, but I am an ASU alum, did all my 3 degrees here, so very excited to be teaching for ASU and teaching this course. In this course, just because of the short nature of the summer semester, there's no way we could even cover half of what there is to talk about when we look at social media and sport communication. So for the purposes of our class, we're going to be looking at 5 main areas, and those are the way that social media impacts sports media, the way sports organizations try and govern or manage social media usage by athletes and other team employees, the way that athletes use social media and how they've become more self-expressive and weighed in more on things like social issues such as racism. And then we'll also look at public relations and crisis communication situations with social media and sports organizations. And then finally, we'll look at how can you use social media as a career tool if you want to work in sport. And so let me just go over each of those areas very briefly here. But if you think about sports media, right? So pretty much every sports reporter or every sports journalist is on Twitter or another social media platform pretty much 24/7 because that is where sports news breaks. We see a lot of speculation and a lot of kind of other things that happen with sports media and sports reporting. So, it's definitely changed the routine for sports journalists. Another thing that it's done, and this kind of gets into the way athletes use social media, is, athletes no longer need sports reporters to get news out. I mean, an athlete can break their own information, and in fact, many of them do on their Twitter accounts or their Instagram accounts. So we're seeing athletes, and in fact, many teams actually become more active media producers with social media, which in some ways is kind of pushing sports reporters out of the coverage or the exclusivity that they used to get with athletes. So that's an interesting change there as well. You'll read about in Unit 1 a partnership between Snapchat and the Olympics, where Snapchat's going to be using their story feature during the upcoming Summer Olympics. So we're going to see a lot more, I think, consumption and broadcast viewing of sport through social media platforms like Snapchat. In terms of organizational governance, if you follow sports at all, you've probably seen a story where an athlete put something out on Twitter or put something on Instagram or on Snapchat that they probably shouldn't have. That's created an issue for the sports organization. So we're going to look at how do sports teams, how do they try and manage what athletes do on social media. Now, our context there is going to be primarily at the intercollegiate level, just because at the professional level, that's something that has to be collectively bargained. I mean, a team isn't really going to say to an athlete, hey, you can't use Twitter, or hey, you can't use Snapchat. Whereas we do see that with student athletes quite a bit. So one assignment you're going to do is you're going to actually draft a social media policy for a Division I athletic team that kind of outlines some boundaries and guidelines for social media use. And then getting into athletes just briefly. I mean, we're seeing athletes do some really interesting things with social media. It really gives them a platform to become their own media outlet, and many of them do that. So if you are familiar with Chad Johnson or Chad Ochocinco, he's someone who was very and continues to be, even though he's not playing anymore, very active on social media. We're seeing athletes do really cool things with fans, like show up at events or take fans places, or even just communicate with fans via social media. At the same time, as I talked about earlier, athletes are, weighing in more on social issues and things that, whereas before it was kind of easier for sports teams to filter that and not let that hit the public. but we're seeing a lot more athletes kind of showing more of their personality and their identity through their social media platforms, which is a really interesting development as well. And then with public relations, I mean, we'll look at ways in which sports organizations have created PR issues through social media, and ways you can use social media to you know fix PR issues. So, in fact, in Unit 1, you'll look at one example where Florida State, when Jameis Winston was the quarterback there, and if you're familiar with him, he was going through legal issues, and they decided to make Jameis Winston available for a Twitter chat and used a hashtag Ask Jameis, and it very quickly morphed into people being very sarcastic and making fun of him and making fun of the university and the team, and it just really blew up in their face. Another incident that some of you may have been familiar with was when Ray Rice, when the incident was going on with him and his wife and the Ravens live tweeted the press conference where Ray Rice said he was sorry. And basically, the reaction to that was that people felt the Ravens were condoning domestic violence. So, there's some issues and just some, boundaries that teams have to be careful of when it comes to public relations. And then lastly, we'll look at how can you use social media as a career networking tool if you want to work in sport. And to me, that's one of the greatest benefits of social media, is that there are so many people in sport who are on social media who are willing to mentor you, who are willing to, have email chats with you or phone calls with you, or are willing to connect with you on Twitter and LinkedIn. It's really interesting. The sport community, in terms of people who work in sport, are just really, really good people, and many of them are very approachable and accessible on social media. And I'm sure you've heard the saying, it's who you know, not what you know. And that's very true when it comes to working in sport, which is a very competitive industry. So we'll talk about how you can, make contacts and, reach out to industry professionals if that's something that you are interested in doing. So, really excited to get our course underway. In Unit 1, we're going to just be looking at a general introduction and overview of social media and some of the different areas that it touches in sport. There'll be 2 discussion forums that you'll need to complete. One is just very simply an introduction discussion forum where you introduce yourself to the class and tell us a little more about yourself. And then in the second one, you're going to be asked to go find a news article about a story involving sport and social media. You'll summarize that incident. You'll talk about what the implications are, and the initial post for both those discussion forums will be due by Saturday, July 2nd at 11:59, and then your 2 response posts to each forum are due by Tuesday, July 5th at 11:59 p.m. So again, really excited to get this course underway. Looking forward to jumping into it, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks.